do the musical chairs bit again. So, for the third question... Oh, sorry.
Diesel.
Sorry. For the third question this afternoon, or is it the fourth, can I have on the stage Jonathan, Caroline, Andrea, Noel, Rosemary and Rashid, please? Yeah. Sorry, Rosemary and Rashid. And the first question is from Nick Hooper.
Time after time, councils have surrendered social housing provision in favour of private housing that prices local people out of the areas in which they have grown up or put down roots. Do you have a vision of how this problem might be solved? In what ways can you, as an Assembly member, influence the provision of social housing in individual London boroughs?
And can you just remember to introduce yourself, even if it's your first name, as you start to speak. Is it 1 minute? 1 minute for everybody, yeah.
Thanks, Nick. Jonathan Bartley. I was actually on Sunday Politics this morning on BBC One, talking about our campaign to save Cressingham Gardens, working with the residents there. We've saved sheltered housing already in Lambeth. We've really got to grips with these issues, and what we've found is that there are no easy solutions, particularly when it comes to the Mayor and the Mayor's powers and the powers of the London Assembly. There is a London plan which sets out planning decisions for London, and that is absolutely crucial to get that amended. But I think we need a London Mayor's Housing Commission to look at all these issues in the round. I think we need to show that we've come of age as a party, have a mature approach to this, and say, let's get all these issues on the table, let's look at them, let's look at what the powers the Mayor has, let's look at how we need to lobby central government to get improved powers. I want to see community land trusts that Tom's talked about rolled out right across London. It's not a particularly easy thing to do. It needs to be considered. We need a London-wide lettings agency to look at renters. We need to fight in our campaigns the sell-off of housing from housing associations. There's a whole raft of measures that we need to take. They're all interconnected, and that's why we need a London Housing Commission to get them going, to get them started, and have a joined-up approach to this issue.
Thank you. There is a huge problem with housing, but the London Assembly members and the Mayor actually currently don't have enough power to be able to do the things that need to be done. However, I agree with all the stuff that Jonathan's just said about community land trusts, making sure that Tom is in charge of housing policy for London, which we've all agreed on before. What I want to talk about now is just some things that we can do differently. In Islington, there is a community that have been going for 39 years in Islington Park Street. It's a mixed needs community, 18 people living in homes as a group home. And they have people who are care leavers, there's someone very elderly who's almost 80, who has Parkinson's, a whole mix of people with mental health issues, a whole mixed community that supports each other. This could be a solution for, hang on, you didn't give me 10 seconds between the yellow and the red. Anyway, we need to look at different models for doing it so that we solve other problems of council budgets being cut in terms of social care, so we can do housing differently.
Hi, Andrea from Lewisham. I think this it's a severe problem that needs a whole combination of solutions that Jonathan alluded to. It's a mixture of housing benefit support for all. So Marie Black isn't the only 20-year-old in the country receiving housing benefit. There's the living rent commission to bring down rents in line with people's incomes. There's a need to have I'd have empty homes officers in each London borough, identifying empty buildings and looking at transferring those into local housing co-ops. It's a whole combination of things. It's getting families out of B&B. We've got to stop the right to buy and introduce the Green Party's right to rent to help people that have got problems with their mortgages, that they don't then get added to the housing queue. We've really got to look at this problem in its totality and do something, especially to help younger people get into decent housing rather than having one room in a house that costs about £250 a week.
No, Lynch, I agree with what's been said already, but I think the main thing is we must not be quiet about this issue. A lot of privatisation and sort of stuff is being slipped through. We must make a fuss and jump up and down, which is why it's so important to have campaigning members as London Assembly members. But we must pressurise the Mayor not to allow so much unaffordable housing replacing council housing. And for every council house that's demolished, there should be an affordable house built in its place. So cause a fuss and don't let them get away with it.
Rosemary Warrington. Yes, I agree with what's been said so far, and that a large part of the influence is by lobbying for more powers for the London Assembly and the Mayor, but also in what Noel said of joining with local people where there are issues. There's the Fredwig and John Walsh Towers very close to me in Leytonstone, which the council want to strip out, meaning that currently they are mainly social housing, a few leaseholders. They want to strip the towers down to their skeletons while keeping the social people with secure tenancies there. We need to join with them, and there's also encouraging landlord licensing, which is happening in Newham and Wolford Forest as well. There's things we can do.
Rashid Nix, the issue of housing is a primary concern for Londoners, social housing in particular. What I would suggest, anyone who follows me on the Twitter knows that I'm very clear about this. I would call for an immediate inquiry into some of the things that are going on, because some of the things that are happening are really sailing very close to the window of actually being quite illegal. For example, down at Elephant and Castle, Haygate and Aylesbury Estate, 22 acres of prime residential real estate sold off. It's worth £1 billion, sold to a private company for, I believe, 50 million. That's 5 pence in the pound. Now, if that was carried out by a group of Nigerians, the Serious Fraud Office would be all over that. Carried out by Southwark Council, some of the councils then go on to become MPs. So I would say that first and foremost, we have an inquiry to find out what is going on, because there's some really awfully dodgy things happening. And I think as for Londoners, they deserve the right to know what's really going on and prosecute where necessary.
Thanks. A couple of questions. The gentleman with the spectacles and then lady just behind. Candidates, you will have 1 minute to address both of the issues that they bring up.
Yes, as the speakers, Les from Camden, Green Party, as the speakers have recognised, the question of how to improve and expand social housing has its flip side. How to stop and deter investment which turns social housing into more like private housing, or replaces it overtly with private housing, which means higher costs for anyone who wants a place to live. So I want to ask much more specifically, how can the GLA use its current powers to disincentivize or even to punish such investment? And secondly, what extra powers would be helpful for such deterrence?
Yes, my son started at University College London last September. He's dropped out partly because he couldn't afford student accommodation. The lowest offer he was given was £200 and something, the highest 300 and something. As I'm sure you know, some of these council estates being sold off, one of them was being sold off to University College London, to private property developers who charge the maximum of the maintenance loan or more. My son's going to the University of Southampton instead. It surprises me the Green Party has the best policies for students, and yet I never hear anyone mention it. And also what you're going to do about this milking of mainly overseas students with these very high costs for accommodation.
I'll say very quickly that the London Assembly, its main job is scrutiny, and actually getting these 3 London Assembly members is very important, because it could be that we then hold the balance when it comes to amending the budget, and that will be a crucial power that we could have. But it's down to the Mayor to effectively set the housing policy. I'm going to just stop there because I want to address that issue of young people and students in particular, because I think it's so important. I would like us as a party to be talking less about the substantive issues. What are you going to do about housing? What are you going to do about transport? And say, what are you going to do for young people? What are you going to do for old people? Now, for young people, I think they are getting absolutely hammered by this government. We've seen it with the withdrawal of housing benefit, the two-tier system, two-tier welfare system that's hurting them over housing benefit. And I think we can, as London Assembly members, fight back and push, for example, for more concessionary travel. We have to think creatively and imaginatively about it. There's concessionary travel for job seekers. Let's extend it to young people. Let's fight austerity using the powers that we have as London, and the influence that we have as London Assembly members. Let's think creatively about it. Long-winded answer. Jonathan Bartley.
Caroline Russell, this is just a minute style. Using the GLA current powers, the GLA current powers really are not enough to be able to tackle all this housing stuff. We need extra powers. The superpowers would be to enable us to have more planning power to be able to say enough of this affordable housing. We will only have genuinely affordable housing, but that would require different powers, and I think it would require devolution of powers to London, but perhaps that is something that we should be getting behind, but I'm sure Tom Chance will be able to advise us on that. And finally, the milking of overseas students. It's not only bad for overseas students, it's also bad for local communities. We've got lots of this unaffordable student housing in Islington. The developers love it because it means they get away from having to provide real affordable housing, and again, it's one of those problems. It's a national government issue in terms of how planning is done, and it's something I'm afraid the London Assembly members don't have the power to tackle at the moment.
I think that's where the Green Party comes in. We have to use all the community groups, the organisations, whether it's Occupy London or South East London Assembly, the unions, the National Union of Students especially, to force pressure and change on the system. We're in a system that cannot carry on in its current form. You know, we've got young people that are living in one room. It's disgusting. How are these young people ever going to be able to get a place of their own? We've got to do something about it, and I think, you know, we have to push for a change of policy. It's just not good enough. I want to see, instead of the 15% social housing in Convoy's Wharf in Lewisham, that's 3,500 new homes. We've only got 15% that are so-called affordable. I don't think they are going to be affordable. I think they're 80% of the market rent. Still, we need to see at least 40 or 50% of social housing. We've got to push back, and we need to reintroduce the university maintenance grants and all the other forms of support for young people, like the housing benefit I've mentioned.
Noel Lynch. Berlin recently introduced rent caps and controls, so specifically what they said is so as not to be like London. You know, I would, and I think the Green Party would back me, call for a 500% council tax on non-dom properties and ones bought only for investment and left empty. As Caroline could probably tell you, a large proportion of the new builds in Islington, I saw the other day, was at 40% or something, were left empty. This is a scandal. It must not go on, and another reason you need a campaigning person on the Assembly.
Rosemary Warrington. Yes, I agree with what people have already said, and I want to talk a little bit more about landlord licensing. This is something that's been brought in already in Newham, and Waltham Forest are process of bringing it in. It's something that the powers already exist for local authorities, and what a Green member of the London Assembly can do is to promote to other local councils. And so the costs are borne by the landlord, and the local authority can feed that money back into a local inspectorate to make sure that rents, that the properties are fit to live in, and that, and hopefully they can also monitor at the very least revenge evictions, and so it's not ideal, but it's something that can be done, right now, and as we should be doing it.
Yeah, Rashid next yet again, last but not least. I would say, recently I heard Edward George, former governor to the Bank of England, when speaking about the austerity cuts, he was saying that what surprises him is that there's not more anger to the cuts. And I thought, well, you need to go and talk to some young people, because the anger is there and it's real. And if you think what happened in August 2011, when the young people had London in a chokehold for a couple of days, that was a dress rehearsal. Because the policies that we're pursuing right now, it's going to get worse. It's absolutely going to get worse. I'm working with young people who are telling me, sir, what's the point in me going to university if I'm going to come up with £70,000 in debt? I might as well hit the road and hustle. Jail is now a career option. And I'm thinking that's what we're creating for the future for our city. If we don't get our head around this housing issue and how we treat our young people, trust me, we're all going to go down. And at that moment when we should be making strong, bold decisions, we kept our heads down, we'll be part of it as well.
We're now going to do the musical chairs bit again, so if these candidates could leave